So we are about to speak about decisions, but let's start with a decision altogether. In a moment, I will hide that coin in one of my hands. Your job will be to find in which hand I will hide that coin. If you find the coin, I will continue. But if you don't find it, I will disconnect. Yeah, I know, that puts some stakes on your decision, but this is what a real decision, or when it is difficult to make a decision, appears. It is when we have stakes. So look closely. In your opinion, and we can do that in the chat so that I can see everything, and we'll do that by the majority. So the the most of you play, the better will be the decision. So do you think the coin is in my hand on the top, or in my hand on the bottom? Put that in the chat. Wow, we have a majority of bottom. And behind my ear. Okay. Okay, so bottom. Good. I will be able to continue then. But in that decision, like other decisions in life, did you have all the cards? Did you have all the information to make the right decision? Today we will speak about just this. What are the traps that are laid out by our brain unconsciously? And before we start, let's play another mental game. I will ask you to think about something, and I want you to lock in your mind the first thing that pops in your mind. Don't overthink it, it is really your first thought. So first, think of a wild animal. And if you thought of a lion or a tiger, put a yes in the chat. Okay, let's continue. Think now of the first color that pops into your mind, the first color. And if you thought about red or blue, put a yes in the chat. Okay, one last one. Think of a simple geometrical shape, like a square or a rectangle. And if you thought about a circle or a triangle, put a yes in the chat. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting that with only 3 questions, I was able to anticipate everything that you were about to think? And this is a perfect illustration of the fact that there are a lot of automatic processes when we are thinking. And while we believe that our thoughts are unique, not common, sometimes they are. And this is what I call mental illusions. And one of those mental illusions are the cognitive biases. And mental illusions are like other illusions, like visual illusions, for instance. I don't know, maybe you know that one. Just raise your hand if you know that illusion, visual illusion. No? Okay, so this illusion, really quickly, is that the width on the top of the green table is equal to the height of the top of the red table. And the height of the top of the green table is equal to the width of the top of the red table. And I know that some of you are thinking, okay, Alex drank too much already in the morning, but let me show you some lines that will help you compare things and see that those 2 dimensions, those 2 lines, the blue line and the yellow line, are equal. And when you look back at the first thing, you cannot see but the illusion. But this is a visual illusion. So in real life, because it is about vision, you can change your perspective. You can add other senses to, even if you only see the illusion, you can feel there is an illusion. But cognitive biases and other automatic processes of thinking all happen in your brain. And when everything happens in your brain, you have no grasp on that. And those are really mental illusions. Before we continue, I would like you to type in the chat important decisions that you've made in the past or important decisions that you have to make in the future. Just so that I could comment on that during this presentation. It could be your decision to quit your salary job to become a freelancer. It could be a decision to partner with someone or with a society or with an agency. It could be to stop partnering with someone or with an agency. It could be defining your prices. It could be deciding to go for a niche rather than being general. But Hunter, put that in the chat so that I can have ideas of decisions that you made. Okay, good. Now today I would like to speak about cognitive biases and those unconscious traps laid out by our brain, but also how to counteract them. But before that, I would like to once again play some games and especially a quiz. So I hope you have a paper with you so that you can write your answers, or otherwise you can open a notepad or Word or something like that. It's just to write a few notes before you can tell them. Don't write them in the chat. I want them to keep to be secret for the moment. So the first quiz, let's imagine that you are a sales director of a small company, and one of your best salespeople calls you and tells you that he has lost 2 prospective clients. And he has lost those 2 prospective clients to one competitor. Let's call it Grizzly. And he tells you that he also heard a lot of aggressivity in the sales strategy of Grizzly. And moreover, he heard that 2 sales guys quit your company, to go work for Grizzly. So you are not naive. The first thing that you do is really calling another one of your best salesmen who confirmed that he also heard rumors of Grizzly being really aggressive in its sales strategy. He also tells you that he has been able to save one contract because of the long-term relationship he had with the CEO. And thanks to that relationship, he was able to know that Grizzly prices are way lower than your company prices. Next thing you do is that you call HR, who confirmed that 2 salespeople left for Grizzly. Now my question for you is, and I want you to write the answer on your paper or in Notepad. Do not share your answer yet. Will you lower your prices? Will you start thinking about a pricing strategy or not? And if not, what will you do? And don't worry, go for your first instinct, your first thought. It is not like an MBA exam, just really your first idea. And show me a thumbs up if you are done doing that. I don't see a lot of thumbs up. You done? Okay, let's move to the second quiz. This time's more of a management. You know Shannon. Shannon is the CEO of a small company, and she comes to you for advice. She comes to you because she's wondering whether she should fire her IT director or not. She tells you she's considering firing her IT director because, well, he's performing average, not below, not above, but mainly is really caustic in meeting with customer, and this gives a bad image of the company to customers. And she tells you that the decision, well, as many decisions, it is not easy to make because, well, on the short term, there will be a lot of issues to deal with, like the management of the customer's database that the IT director is currently managing. But on your paper, I want you to write the answer to that question. Would you advise Shannon to fire her IT director or not? And if not, what would you advise Shannon? Same thing. First thought, this is not an HR exam. Just the first idea that comes to your mind. And put me a thumbs up when you are done. Okay. Was it easy for you to have an idea? Was it obvious that you already had an idea when I asked the question? You didn't have to think too much to have one thought, one idea, whether to say, okay, I will lower my price, I will fire the director or not, and I have another option. Was it easy to do that? Yes? Just raise your hand. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting that automatically we have an answer? And when we are thinking too automatically, that's when the cognitive biases appear. So first, a quick definition of what I call cognitive bias. A cognitive bias is a deviation from what would be the rational solution, a deviation from that, and a deviation that is repeatable and predictable. If it is just a one-time deviation, that's just error, random mistake, that happens. But when this can be repeated over and over within one person and within a lot of person and becomes predictable, we start to speak about cognitive biases. And depending on how you classify the biases, there are around 120 and 180 cognitive biases that we have classified. So in those short 30 minutes, I won't be able to dig into all those cognitive biases, but I've selected 3 of them to share with you because those are really important in the decision-making process. The first one, you probably have heard the name, is the confirmation bias. And I combined it with the second one, that is the erroneous causality. So the confirmation bias is our tendency to seek and look for information that confirm an idea we already have, a desire we have, an assumption we have, and to disregard information that go against the idea, the assumption, or the desire we have. The erroneous causality happens because our brain is really good at connecting dots. It does that almost automatically. But sometimes the dots are just correlations. There is no cause, there is no real link. It is just randomness. It is just by chance that they happen almost at the same time. So now I'm curious. To the first quiz question, what did you decide? Did you decide to lower your prices, or did you decide something else? And now you can put that in the chat. So you didn't lower your prices for Winnie, for Frederic, for Jenny either. Elina, no. Neither. Okay, and you can put also in the chat, what did you do? That could be interesting. But the story that I told you in the quiz is a perfect illustration of both confirmation bias and the erroneous causality. The erroneous causality is the first salespeople who calls you telling you that he lost 2 prospective clients to Grizzly. He heard rumors of Grizzly being aggressive in his sales strategy, and he heard 2 people quitting for Grizzly. He connected those 3 dots, and he invented or assumed that there was a connection and that Grizzly was really a competitor to take care of and to really try to fight. That was the erroneous causality. But when we think about that, like salespeople quitting company and going to a competitor, that's quite normal. In the sales business, a lot of salespeople are moving from company to company, and if they are not changing career, where else would they go rather than the competition? And the confirmation bias is everything that I told you in that story. Calling another salesperson to confirm the thing of the first salespeople, and calling the HR to confirm once again. In the story, I didn't tell you anything to not confirm or to look for other facts. And that is one of the traps of the confirmation bias, is that most of the time we are looking for facts. We are just searching for the facts and looking for the facts where we are just confirming things. So in our little story, we could ask, okay, did we lose anything? Because for the moment, we didn't win a prospective client, we didn't lose an existing client, so we didn't win anything, we didn't lose anything. But is there any other salespeople who won something or lost something? or lost the contract. On the 2 prospective clients that we lost, our offer, was it good? Was it suited? Maybe we were not suited and Grizzly offer was best. And on the offer that was renewed, maybe our offer was really best suited to that customer rather than Grizzly. There are so much things that we can think about that story and try to really analyze, but the confirmation bias kind of locks us into trying to confirm just the fact that we heard or that we've been told. And that could be really a trap. The third cognitive bias that I would like to share with you is the narrow framing. So here I'm curious, did you advise Shannon to fire IT director or not? And if not, what did you advise? And put that in the chat. Yeah, that's when I see that I am in a freelancing business and not in the company and corporate with a lot of salary people. So, the narrow framing is, let me put that a bit bigger so that you can see. The narrow framing is our tendency, like that light that you can see in the theater that goes a pursuit, that lights that sheds a circle of light on stage, that lights really brightly that part of the stage, but that make everything of the stage completely in the dark. And the narrow framing is exactly that tendency we have in our brain to, when we are thinking about something, to lock our attention on that and to not try to widen this, to look at other options. So in the story of Shannon and her IT director, indeed, maybe IT director is not the right position for that person. Maybe it would be well suited to another position. But maybe, if we ask his team, maybe they like that approach, because that will prevent problems to happen further down the road during projects. And maybe we can just coach or train that person rather than just fire or not. But the narrow frame that we put on the IT director prevent us to turn the light and ask the question, maybe that is Shannon's management style that is the issue there. And the narrow framing is really easy to detect when you have to make a decision. Like, should I do this or not? Should I fire my IT director or not? That's one option. That is narrow framing. So our goal is really to counteract this. So this is really the 3 cognitive biases I want to tell you about. With if I had more time, I could go deep into all the cognitive biases, but the confirmation bias, the erroneous causality, and the narrow frame are already responsible for a lot of mistakes when making a decision. So now when we think about how we make decision usually, well, the most common approach to make decision is the ProCon approach. You make a list of pros, you make a list of cons, and you decide if there are more pros than cons. But knowing already those 3 biases, the confirmation bias, the erroneous causality, and the narrow framing, we can see that the approach is too limited. Because just making a list of pros and cons doesn't help us to escape the narrow framing. Should I fire my IT director? There are pros, there are cons, but I'm still narrow framing on should I do this or not. It doesn't prevent us to counteract and to fight the confirmation bias. It doesn't help us to challenge the dot connection that we've made and the causality we assumed. So rather than a pro or con approach, what I think is rather that we need a decision process. We need a decision process to be able to counteract all those biases, and at least those 3 ones, but there are, like I said, many more. And alas, there are no universal decision process. There are no universal decision process that will work in every situation because, well, depending on the people, depending on the context, depending on the knowledge and experience of the people, depending on how many people make the decision, there are many parameters to play with. But luckily, there are some keys to create a good decision process. And I would like to share 4 of those with you today. The first one is to define the method beforehand. That is, before you are facing the decision, before you have to make the decision, when everything is calm, you have to decide on how you will decide. So that is really thinking about the steps or the tools that you will follow that will help you, that will force you to do things that will help you to counteract the biases. So for instance, I told you that cognitive biases are mental illusions. Everything happens in my brain and I can't have any grasp on that. It is completely impossible. But it is easy for me to see a cognitive bias at play in your brain, as it is easy for you to see a cognitive bias at play in my brain. So maybe in the decision process, it is interesting to, at some point, ask the advice of someone outside of yourself, of someone else, so that it will give you an outside view of your thinking. There are other problems with group thinking and such. I cannot enter into those details today. I'll be happy to discuss with about that later on by email or through the Swapcard platform with you. Today I cannot. But stating that before I have to make a decision, I will make those steps. At some point, I will ask the advice of someone else. At some point, I will use that tool to help me fight and counteract and challenge my assumptions. I think is really important. The second thing is your process to help you multiply options, to widen the option. So this is clearly to counteract the narrow framing. A simple tool that is really useful for that is called the option that you thought are not available anymore. So in the option, should I fire my IT director or not? Let's imagine that there is a law that was created that prevents company to fire people. What else could I do? And just asking that question will generate a lot of options. And I think you should have at least 3 options when you are making a decision. Otherwise, it is really too narrow of a choice. If it is deciding doing this or not, that is only 1 option. Doing A or B, that's 2 options. That starts to be a choice. But if I have 3 options, it's way better because I can compare, counteract, and maybe think about other options as well. Next, your process should help you to reality test your assumptions. So this is really to counteract the confirmation bias and the erroneous causality. So reality testing could be just sometimes to study the opposite. Let me give you an example. As a freelancer, maybe you would like to partner with an agency. And you will, when making that decision, you will analyze why partnering with that agency would be a good idea. Or if we go into the realm of corporate, an acquisition. Would this acquisition be good for the company? Considering the opposite is also analyzing why working with that agency, why doing this acquisition would be bad, would be a bad decision. This will force the analysis to take into account not just the positive things that we will try to confirm because we made the assumption that it will be a positive decision. It will be perfect to analyze also the contrary. Another way to reality test the assumption is to ask experts, not for opinions, this is important, not for opinions, but key base figures. Like if you want to create a startup, it is important of you to know that today, as of today's figure, 9 startups out of 10 fail within the 6 months or the first year. It is important for you to know that to assess correctly your probability. And the last thing that your decision process should help you with is to attain distance. attain distance, especially from your short-term emotions. I didn't have time to go deep into this. Emotions are not something that is bad. Don't get me wrong on that. Emotions are really important to identify what are your core values, where you would like to go. But it is also important to put the right weight on them in the decision process. And sometimes we make the decision in a hurry because, well, we had a great meeting, we discussed all those options, and we are in the joyful atmosphere, and we make our decision. And in fact, attain distance from those short-term emotions could be simple as what a lot of CEOs do: decide on the next morning. So rather than deciding in the joyous of the discussion of the meeting about all those options and that we've been able to reach an agreement and so forth, okay, that's good. I will make my final decision tomorrow morning after a good night's sleep and after all those emotions I've been able to settle in. Okay, so there you have them. We spoke about the cognitive biases that are deviation from rationality, that are really mental illusion. We have no grasp on that. We spoke about the confirmation bias, the erroneous causality, and the narrow framing. And we've seen that just with those three biases, the usual method of the ProCon approach that we all use, and because that is the way we've always seen people make decisions, is too limited, because it doesn't help us counteract those three biases, and doesn't help counteract other biases as well. And rather, I advise you to have a decision process, to define that process before, and when it is calm, when you are not in the rush of the decision, decide on how you will decide, what will be the tools, what will be the steps you will use and you will perform to make your decision. Your decision process should help you multiply the options, reality test your assumptions, and attain distance.